Alright, quick hello. This is an original Tales First story and I won't over-explain. Let's start.
At a family celebration, my sister thought it'd be funny to introduce my 12-year-old as a stinky niece, with cheap clothes and no future. My parents laughed along like it was normal. Then Grandma stood up, smiled, and announced that my daughter was... Their faces drained of color. Family celebrations have a special kind of noise. Not the fun kind. Not the music and laughter kind. The kind where you can hear a compliment coming 3 minutes before it hits you because it's being sharpened in someone's mouth. This one was at a rented event hall that smelled like industrial floor polish and rich people perfume. White tablecloths. Too many candles. A dessert table that looked like it had its own security detail. My grandma was seated at the head table like a small, elegant general. Everyone orbited her in tight circles, smiling a little too hard, laughing a little too loud. And me? I was doing what I always do. I was trying to keep my daughter, Emma, close without making it obvious that I was trying to keep her close. If you've never had to do that, congratulations. Your nervous system probably still works. Emma was 12. Tall for her age, all elbows in focus. She had this calm, quiet competence that made adults either like her immediately or resent her for existing. Her dress was simple, something she'd made herself with my grandma's old sewing patterns and a lot of stubbornness. Navy fabric, neat seams, tiny hand-stitched detail at the collar that she'd worked on for 3 nights straight while muttering, "It's not sitting right." If you asked Emma what she wanted to be when she grew up, she wouldn't say rich. She would say, better. She was standing beside me, fingers worrying the edge of her sleeve the way she did when she was bracing for impact. And, like clockwork, impact walked over in heels. My sister Nicole. Nicole looked like a department store mannequin that had been handed a personality and told to weaponize it. Hair perfect. Smile perfect. Outfit probably had its own insurance policy. Trailing behind her, Grant, her husband, who always looked like he was trying to remember where he parked his empathy, and their 3 kids, Tyler, Avery, and Layla, dressed head to toe in designer like they were sponsored by a brand that hated children. Nicole spotted someone across the room, a woman in a sleek blazer, drink in hand, the kind of person Nicole wanted to impress. Businessy. Cool. New. Nicole's eyes lit up. You could practically hear the gears turning. She reached out and, without asking, hooked a hand lightly around Emma's shoulder like Emma was a handbag she was about to show off. "Come here," Nicole said, bright as a TV host. Emma stiffened. I took 1 step closer, not dramatic, just positioning. Like I was quietly placing myself between my child and a moving vehicle. Nicole dragged Emma toward the woman. "You have to meet my niece," she said, laughing already. The woman smiled politely, the way you do when someone is pulling you into a family dynamic you did not consent to. "This," Nicole announced, squeezing Emma's shoulder just a bit too tight, "is my stinky niece." She waited for the laugh like it was a punchline she'd paid money for. I felt Emma go still beside me, not frozen like a statue, still like a kid trying to become invisible. Nicole leaned in, enjoying herself. "She insists on wearing those cheap little outfits she makes," she said, voice all playful disgust. "Thinks she's creative." Her mouth curled. "And honestly, with clothes like that and an attitude like hers, no future." There. The line. Delivered like a joke, but sharp enough to draw blood. Nicole laughed like she'd just invented comedy. My mom laughed too, that little airy laugh that says, "We're all in on it." My dad chuckled like it was harmless, like it was normal, like it was tradition. Emma's fingers tightened on her sleeve. Her gaze dropped. Her shoulders did that tiny inward fold that kids do when they're trying not to cry in public. And I, of course, There's a moment in situations like that where you can either explode or protect. Exploding feels good for about 8 seconds. Protecting lasts longer. So I didn't say what my body wanted to say. I stepped closer, put my hand lightly at Emma's back, grounded her. Warm. Present. The woman in the blazer didn't laugh. Not really. She gave a tight smile, eyes darting like she was looking for an exit sign. A cousin across the room stopped chewing mid-bite. Someone else took a sip that lasted too long. The laughter didn't spread the way Nicole expected. It landed on the table like a dead fish. Nicole's kids smirked anyway. Tyler whispered something to Avery. Layla did that little nose scrunch that kids do when they've learned contempt from watching adults. My sister's husband Grant laughed half a second late, like he wasn't sure which script he was supposed to follow. Emma didn't speak. She didn't correct Nicole. She didn't defend herself. She just stood there, 12 years old, in a dress she'd sewn herself, listening to adults talk about her like she wasn't standing right there. And then my grandma stood up, not slowly, not shakily, not like she needed anyone's help. She stood like a person who had decided she was done letting the room belong to someone else. The chatter softened. Even the clinking of forks seemed to hesitate. My grandma smiled, small, calm, almost amused, and looked at Emma first. Not at Nicole, not at my parents. Emma. Then she lifted her gaze to the room and began to speak, confident and clear, like she'd been waiting for the perfect moment. And I realized everyone was listening now, even Nicole, even my parents. And when my grandma finally stopped talking, Mom, Dad, and Nicole looked completely pale. If you want to understand why my parents laughed, you have to understand that Nicole and I were raised in a family where cruelty was treated like personality. Nicole wasn't always cruel, not at first. She was just chosen. Growing up, Nicole was the favorite in the way some families pick a golden child like it's a hobby. Nicole was pretty. Nicole was fun. Nicole knew how to present herself. When Nicole walked into a room, my mom would brighten like someone had turned on a lamp. When I walked into a room, my mom would squint like she was checking for stains. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't screaming. It was 1,000 tiny corrections. Stand up straighter. Smile more. Why can't you be more like your sister? I learned early that if I cared about something too deeply, someone would mock it out of me. If I worked hard at something, it was intense. If I didn't care about appearances, it was lazy. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't wild. I just wasn't Nicole. And my dad was the kind of man who thought keeping the peace meant never calling out the person causing the problem, which meant the problem always got fed. The only person who ever treated me like a full human being in that house was my grandma. My grandma didn't care if your outfit was expensive. She cared if your hem was straight. She didn't care if you looked impressive. She cared if you were capable. She wasn't warm in a gushy way. She was fair. And when you're the scapegoat in a family, fairness feels like sunlight. When Emma was born, I had this naive hope that maybe my family would reset. Like the presence of a child might make them softer, kinder, less obsessed with whatever imaginary scoreboard they were keeping. They did not reset. They simply transferred the target. Nicole had Tyler, Avery, and Layla, 3 little satellites orbiting Nicole's ego. They were always dressed perfectly, always coached to perform, always told they were special in the way that made them look down on everyone else. They would walk into gatherings like tiny royalty. Emma walked in like a kid who just wanted to sit near the snack table and quietly observe the world, and that was enough to make them hate her. Emma didn't do pretty the way Nicole wanted. She didn't do cute. She didn't do look at me. Emma did work. She would spend hours bent over fabric, learning stitches, sketching designs, ripping seams to redo them, trying again when it didn't sit right. She would forget to play dress up because she was building something with her hands. And because she was a kid, that work came with mess. Thread clippings, fabric scraps, hair falling out of her ponytail, the faint smell of effort. So Nicole started calling her Stinky, not because Emma was dirty, because Emma didn't prioritize being polished for other people, because Emma chose craft over performance. And in our family, that was apparently a crime. Emma started making her own clothes because she loved it, because she liked the control, because she liked turning an idea into something real. But to Nicole and my parents, it was cheap. They didn't see a child learning a skill. They saw a child refusing to play their game. And then there was my grandma's business. My grandma didn't just like clothing. She built something from it. A real business, a real company, real people employed, real contracts, real money, not influencer fashion, not buy a tote bag and call it a brand. This was the kind of business that had a showroom, staff, a warehouse, a production calendar. My grandma's name meant something in our city. She made clothes the way a surgeon works, precise, careful, unapologetically competent. And my parents and Nicole, they treated it like a fountain. They lived off payouts and perks and access, like it was their birthright. They talked like heirs. They dressed like heirs. They acted like heirs. They liked being associated with my grandma's success without doing any of the work that created it. Nicole especially loved the image of it. She loved telling people, "Oh, my family owns a fashion company," like that sentence did all the work for her. But Emma cared about the craft. Emma would ask my grandma questions that made my grandma's eyes sharpen with interest. Why does this fabric pull like that? How do you make a collar sit clean? What's the difference between something that looks expensive and something that is well made? My grandma noticed. Not in a dramatic, chosen one way, in a quiet, practical way. Emma would show her a seam, and my grandma would nod once. That nod meant more to Emma than any compliment Nicole had ever faked. Over time, their bond grew. Quiet conversations, little lessons. My grandma lending Emma a pattern and saying, "Bring it back with notes." Emma lighting up like someone had handed her a key. And my grandma also noticed something else. Emma wasn't just talented. She was being treated cruelly, in the same way I had been treated. And my grandma, the only fair person in our family, had been watching for years. I didn't know the specifics then. I only knew this. My grandma was paying attention, and she was quietly getting serious. And back at that celebration, when she stood up and smiled at Emma, I should have realized. My grandma wasn't standing to smooth things over. She was standing to end something. The room felt different when we snapped back into it. Like someone had turned the temperature down 2 degrees and everyone's skin noticed. My grandma stood upright, steady, hands lightly resting on the edge of the head table as if she owned the air, which honestly, she did. She looked directly at Nicole. "You really called her Stinky in front of strangers," she said. Nicole's smile came out big and shiny. "It's just a joke." My grandma didn't raise her voice. She didn't scold. She just tilted her head slightly and said, "If it's a joke, explain what's funny." Nicole's smile twitched. "Oh, come on, Grandma," Nicole started, as if the word grandma might magically stop consequences. My grandma turned her head toward Nicole like she was turning a page. "Oh, come on me," she said. "You're a grown woman." A hush rippled through the room. My grandma walked over to Emma. Not to Nicole. Not to my parents. "Emma." She took Emma's hand gently. "Come here, sweetheart," she said, voice warm. Emma looked at me like she was asking permission to breathe. I nodded once. Emma stepped forward and my grandma squeezed her hand like she was reminding her, "You are safe. You are not alone." My dad forced a laugh, like he could laugh the moment into harmlessness. "It's a family party," Dad said. "Let's not do this right now." My grandma looked at him. Then you shouldn't have laughed, she said. Dad's laugh died in his throat. My grandma faced the room. You all keep treating her like she's nothing, she said. My mom jumped in fast, voice high and offended. We do not! My grandma lifted a hand. Not dramatic, just final. Yes, she said, you do. I've watched it for years. Nicole shifted, still trying to play it off. My grandma's gaze didn't waver. And since you care so much about the future, she continued, here's the truth. My stomach clenched. Emma's fingers tightened around mine. That little girl you just mocked, my grandma said, her voice calm and steady. She's not who you've been treating her like. She paused, letting the room settle. She's my great-granddaughter, she continued, and she's the one I've chosen to carry on what I built. There was a shift then, not shock yet, but confusion. My grandma didn't rush it. I didn't choose her for sentiment, she said. I chose her because she works, because she learns, because she respects the craft instead of just wearing the results. She looked directly at Nicole, then at my parents. That company you all assume belongs to you? She said. It doesn't. Another beat. When I'm gone, it goes to her. All of it. The room made a sound. Not a gasp, not a scream. More like the collective inhale of people realizing they'd been standing on thin ice. Nicole blinked hard. What? Dad's face tightened. What did you just say? Nicole's voice shot up. You can't be serious. She's a kid. My grandma nodded once. Exactly. A kid you've been bullying. Nicole stabbed a finger toward Emma's dress. Look at her! Nicole snapped. She looks... I stepped in before the word could land. Stop talking about my child like she's not standing here, I said. Nicole's eyes flashed toward me, furious. My mom tried the soft voice, the one she used when she wanted control without looking controlling. Okay, we can talk about this later. Privately, Mom said. My grandma's smile turned cold. No, she said, because later is how you keep getting away with it. Dad leaned forward, jaw tight. You're doing this because of one stupid joke? My grandma's voice stayed level. No, she said. This didn't start tonight. Tonight was just the last time. Nicole's face was going blotchy. Panic was clawing its way through her charm. And then my grandma added calmly, like she was reading a grocery list. And before anyone starts yelling, this isn't a speech. It's already signed. The lawyer handled it weeks ago. I brought copies, just in case I would need them. Nicole's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't find a sentence that would change reality. So what? Nicole said, voice shaking. You're just cutting us out. My grandma looked at her. I was going to make sure everyone was comfortable, she said. My mom's eyes widened. She could hear the implication and she hated it. My grandma continued, slow and clear. But after what you just did to that little girl, I changed my mind. Nicole stepped closer, eyes bright with panic. Fix it, now! My grandma tilted her head. Or what? Nicole's gaze flicked, just for a split second, toward Emma. It was small. It was quick. But I saw it. I pulled Emma behind me without thinking. Guests stared. No one laughed. No one looked away fast enough to pretend they didn't see what was happening. Nicole shouted, You're ruining my life! My grandma answered, almost gentle, like she was explaining gravity. No, she said. I'm stopping you from ruining hers. Mom and Dad grabbed their coats. Nicole's face twisted, pure rage now. This isn't over! Then they stormed out of the celebration. Nicole first, Grant trailing after her like he'd been dragged by a bad decision, Tyler and Avery and Layla confused and irritated, like they'd just been told the world didn't revolve around them. The music kept playing. Someone awkwardly clinked a glass like that might restart reality. Emma whispered, very small, "Mom, what just happened?" I crouched and held her face gently. "You're okay," I said. "I've got you." My grandma stepped closer and rested her hand on my shoulder, steady, and I knew the real fight starts after tonight. The retaliation didn't start with Nicole calling me directly. That would have been too honest. It started with other people. Relatives who suddenly discovered my phone number still worked. People who hadn't checked on me in years, developing a deep spiritual concern for my grandma's well-being. My phone buzzed on a Tuesday morning. A cousin. "Hey, are you okay? Aunt says Grandma's confused and you're handling her stuff now." Another message, minutes later. "I heard you made her sign something. That's really serious, Lauren." A voice note from an aunt, soft tone, sharp implication. "We're just worried someone might be taking advantage. You know how old she is." It was the same rumor in different outfits. Grandma's confused. Lauren's controlling her. Emma's being used. I stared at the screen and felt my body go cold. Not angry yet. Cold. Because the wording was too similar, too coordinated. And then Nicole got brave enough to put her fingerprints on it. The family group chat lit up. The one that's mostly used for passive-aggressive holiday scheduling and photos of food nobody asked for. Nicole wrote, "For everyone asking, Grandma signed documents she didn't fully understand. Lauren has been isolating her and using Emma to guilt her. If anyone actually cares about Grandma, please check on her. This isn't about money, it's about protecting her." I read it twice. Then I laughed once, out loud, alone in my kitchen. Because nothing screams, "This isn't about money," like a paragraph about documents. Emma walked in with her backpack and paused when she saw my face. "Mom?" she asked. I put my phone face down like it was something poisonous. "Nothing you need to carry," I said. "Go wash your hands." She hesitated. "Is it because of me?" That question hit me in a place I didn't like. I kept my voice even. "No, this is because adults can't handle consequences." She nodded, but I could see it. The guilt was already trying to make itself a home in her chest. So I did what I've learned to do with people like my family. I took receipts. I saved screenshots. I saved voice notes. I made a folder. I titled it something boring because boring is how you stay sane. Messages. Then I drove to my grandma's house. I didn't march in dramatic. I didn't cry. I sat down, opened the folder, and showed her what they were saying, what Nicole had written in her own words. My grandma read quietly. Then she looked up, calm as stone. "So that's the story she picked," she said. I swallowed. "They're telling people you're not you." My grandma nodded once. "Fine." She picked up her phone and called her attorney. Speakerphone. No mystery. No theatrics. Just adults handling adult consequences. I listened as my grandma, in her measured voice, said things like, "Send a letter. Stop the defamation." Then I asked the question that had been buzzing in my brain like a fly. "Can they undo it?" I asked. My grandma didn't blink. "No," she said. "It's already done properly." Plain English. Grounded. Final. I breathed out slowly. That night, my phone rang. Dad. And the second I saw his name, I knew the smear campaign had hit the stage where it stops pretending to be concerned and starts being angry. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. It was short, sharp, and full of the kind of rage that tries to sound like authority. "Lauren," Dad snapped, "you're going to fix this. You're going to stop embarrassing this family. Call me back." I saved it. And 2 days later, my doorbell camera pinged. I looked at my phone, and there they were. Mom, Dad, Nicole, Grant, Tyler, Avery, Layla, all on my porch like they were auditioning for most insincere apology. Mom was smiling so hard it looked painful. Dad had his jaw set like he was already mad at me for not solving the problem they created. Nicole's face was bright and sweet in the way that makes your skin crawl. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Mom started immediately. "Sweetheart, we just want to talk. We've been praying." Nicole leaned forward, soft voice. "We love her. We love you. We're family." Dad jumped in. "Enough drama. Tell Grandma to stop this." There it was. Not an apology. A demand. I blinked. "That's why you're here." Mom clutched her chest. "We didn't mean it. It was a joke." I kept my voice level. "A joke is funny. That was humiliation." Nicole laughed like she still believed she could charm reality into changing shape. "Oh, please, Lauren, you're acting like we hit her." I held the doorframe. "You laughed while she stood there." Mom lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret. "Just tell Grandma you were emotional. Tell her you misunderstood. She'll calm down." I stared at her. "You want me to lie so you can keep your access." Nicole's smile slipped. "Don't be disgusting." I kept my voice steady. "You're not welcome here." Dad's face hardened. "You're really choosing this?" I nodded. "I'm choosing my child." Nicole took a step closer, irritation leaking through the sugar. "It was one joke," she snapped. "And honestly..." She rolled her eyes and muttered, just loud enough to be heard. "She does stink sometimes." Behind me, Emma made a tiny sound like her breath caught. Mom hissed, "Stop." Too late. I looked at Nicole, steady. "Get off my porch," I said. Nicole's face twisted. "You think you won?" "I think you showed me who you are," I said. Then I closed the door. Through the wood, I heard Dad spit. "This isn't over." I opened my phone and saved the doorbell footage. Date. Timit. Receipt. And then a few days later, I came home and something was wrong inside the house. I knew it the second I opened the door. The air felt wrong, not messy, not loud. Wrong. Then I heard it. Soft crying. I rushed into the living room and found Emma at the table, shoulders tight, cheeks wet, trying to swallow her tears like she could hide them. And there, too casual, too comfortable, was Nicole. Grant was near the doorway like he wanted to evaporate. Tyler and Avery and Layla were hovering around Emma's sewing corner like vultures pretending to be curious. Nicole turned when she saw me, eyebrows lifting like I'd surprised her in my own house. "Oh," she said brightly. "Hey." I stared. "What are you doing here?" Nicole shrugged, sweet voice. "We just came to see Emma. We wanted to be nice." My throat went tight. "You came when I wasn't home." Nicole waved a hand. She let us in. Emma flinched at that, like she'd already been blaming herself. I moved to Emma immediately, hand on her shoulder. "Did you let them in?" I asked softly. Emma nodded, tears spilling again. They said they were sorry." Nicole's voice turned syrupy. "We are sorry." I looked at Nicole. "What did you say to her?" Nicole laughed lightly. "Nothing. We just talked." Emma's voice cracked. "They said Grandma made a mistake." My stomach dropped. Emma kept going, words tumbling out like she couldn't keep them inside anymore. "They said Grandma didn't understand what she signed." Nicole jumped in fast, smiling. "We were being gentle. We didn't want to upset her." Emma wiped her face with her sleeve. "They said, if I just told Grandma they were nice to me." I froze. "Nice how?" Emma swallowed. "Like, that it was just a joke. That they didn't mean it the way it sounded. That they're always good to me, really." She looked at the floor. "They said if I told her that, she might change her mind." Nicole tilted her head like she was explaining something to a toddler. "Emma, sweetheart, we're trying to help you," she cooed. "This is a lot for a kid." Emma's eyes squeezed shut. "And they said, if I don't fix it, I'll be the reason Mom's family is broken." That line landed like a rock, a threat disguised as concern. Classic Nicole. I crouched beside Emma. "Hey, look at me." Emma's eyes met mine, terrified. "That is not your job," I said, slow and clear. "That is not your burden." Behind us, there was a small clatter. I turned. Layla was too close to the sewing machine. Tyler was smirking. Avery had a piece of fabric in her hands like it was trash. "Don't touch that," I said, voice flat. Tyler shrugged. "We were just looking." I stepped over, and my stomach sank further. The machine looked wrong. Thread tangled in a way that didn't happen by accident. The top thread looped tight like someone had yanked it hard. The needle was bent. The little box where Emma kept spare needles was open, and one was missing. The hand wheel was stiff, like it had been forced past the point it wanted to go. Emma whispered, "They were being nice at first. Then they started touching it. I told them to stop." Nicole rolled her eyes. "It's a machine, Lauren." "It's her safe place," I said. Tyler shrugged again, like he was bored. "It was old anyway." Emma's voice was tiny. "It wasn't." Then Avery, 12-ish, old enough to know better, muttered, "She deserved it." Silence hit the room like a slap. Nicole's smile flickered. "What did you just say?" I asked, quietly. Avery looked away. Nicole snapped, "Don't be dramatic." I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. "Out," I said. "Now." Nicole scoffed. "Lauren." "Out," I repeated. Grant finally shifted, murmuring, "Nicole." Nicole's face hardened. "You're insane. You're turning her against us." I pointed at the door. "Out." They left with the kind of offended rage that only comes from people who genuinely believe consequences are unfair. The moment the door shut, Emma started apologizing like she couldn't stop. I didn't know," she said, breathy and panicked. "They said they were sorry. I thought—" I grabbed her hands gently. "Stop," I said. "Listen to me. You didn't do anything wrong. You trusted adults who should have acted like adults." She shook her head. "But if you hadn't opened the door," I said, "they would have found another way. This is not on you." Then I did something practical, because practical is how you put your own heart back in your chest. I took photos of the machine, 3 angles, close-ups, the bent needle, the missing spare needle box, the jammed thread. That night, I took the machine to a repair shop. The technician looked at it for 2 minutes, frowned, and said, "This isn't wear and tear. Someone forced it." He printed a repair estimate. Receipt. I put it in the same folder as the doorbell footage and the screenshots. Then I called my grandma. I didn't rant. I didn't perform. I told her the facts. They came to my house when I wasn't home. They pressured Emma to fix it. They sabotaged her machine. My grandma went quiet. Then she said, very softly, "Put your phone down. I'll handle it." The next day, my phone buzzed with an email from my grandma's attorney. Attached was a copy of the notice that had been sent out that morning. No contact. All communication through counsel. Stop contacting the child. Stop showing up at the home. And for the first time in my life, family drama wasn't a screaming match. It was boundaries with teeth. Nicole wasn't the kind of person who could resist testing a locked door. 2 days later, my grandma called me. Her voice was calm, but there was a little edge to it, the kind she got when someone tried her patience. They came to the business, she said. My stomach tightened. Nicole? Yes, my grandma said. And your father? And Grant. Of course. A full delegation. My grandma didn't sound shocked. She sounded tired. They thought if they showed up in person, they could make it a conversation, she said, and you could hear the quotation marks in her voice. What happened? I asked. My grandma paused, just long enough to make it satisfying. They were denied access, she said. I closed my eyes. They argued with security, my grandma continued. They demanded to see me. They said I was being controlled. Let me guess, I said. They said it wasn't about money. My grandma made a small hum that might have been a laugh. They were told to leave, she said. They didn't. And then? I asked. And then, my grandma said, voice smooth as glass. Security logged it. My attorney was notified, and they were formally warned again to stop. A paper consequence is one thing. A security guard saying no in public is another. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Nicole. Her voice was sweet for exactly 1 second, like she couldn't decide which mask to wear. Lauren, she said, too light. This is insane! Then the sweetness cracked. You think you can do this to us? You think you can take everything and hide behind Emma? If you don't fix this, you're going to regret it. Click. I didn't call her back. I forwarded it to my grandma's attorney. Then I went to Emma's room and sat on the edge of her bed. New rule, I said. Emma looked up, wary. We don't open the door for anyone, I said. Not Nicole. Not Grandma's messengers. Not anybody. If someone shows up, you call me. You don't talk. You don't explain. You just call me. Emma's shoulders dropped a fraction. Okay. And if anyone ever tries to make you feel like it's your job to fix adult problems, I added, you tell me. Immediately. Emma's eyes filled, but she blinked hard and nodded. 6 months later, the smear campaign was dead. Not because Nicole got nicer, because it stopped landing. My grandma kept showing up sharp, consistent, documented, so the she's confused angle ran out of oxygen. And then the money stopped. For years, my parents and Nicole had been living off a monthly stipend from the company, about $12,000 a month between them for family support and consulting that mostly meant showing up when cameras were around. 6 months after that celebration, it was zero. By the 1-year mark, the consequences were loud enough to hear from across town. They sold the house. Not downsized, sold. Moving truck, cardboard boxes, the whole thing. Nicole had to get a real job, one where you can't roll your eyes at your boss and call it confidence. She didn't last long at the first one, or the second. My dad tried too, until someone younger than him told him what to do, and he acted like that was oppression. My mom started listing her barely worn designer stuff online like it was a business. It wasn't. It was liquidation. And Nicole's kids, Tyler, Avery, and Layla, lost their minds. They'd been raised like designer labels were basic human rights. When the labels disappeared, the tantrums didn't. Loud public meltdowns, screaming over shoes, melting down over being told no. I didn't learn any of this because I was hunting gossip. I learned it because they kept trying to reach me. New numbers, new emails, relatives sent as messengers. And every time, the same thing leaked out. They didn't miss Emma. They missed the money. We stayed no contact. We replaced Emma's sewing machine. And one night, about a year later, I walked past her room and heard that steady hum again. Calm, stubborn, normal. I peeked in. Emma was bent over fabric, focused, hands steady. No flinching, no shrinking. Just my daughter working like she finally believed she was allowed to take up space. So what do you think? Did my grandmother do the right thing, or did she go too far? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.